Ladies and gentlemen of the internet, it's me, Chef Lethal, here with another episode of Tasty Techniques for you. Today's episode is very near and dear to my heart because we're going to be going slightly sciencey and doing a technique called sous vide. Now I know what you may or may not be thinking, but sous vide does not mean to file a lawsuit against someone whose name is weirdly vide. It's a French term that means under vacuum, and the basis of the whole technique is vacuum sealing a piece of meat or vegetables or something in an airtight environment, cooking it at a very precise temperature, and then having perfect results at the end. It's that last part that really makes sous vide worth it. Because yeah, there's some equipment that you have to buy and specialized things and special attention. It might actually take a little bit longer to cook a thing, but the result is perfectly executed food every single time. Let's talk about that special equipment you're gonna need, and keep in mind that this is the stuff that I'm gonna use anytime I say in a future episode that we're gonna sous vide something. First, you're going to need an immersion circulator. That's what this thing is. There are commercial brands and then there's more home style brands, which is what this is here. It's from Innova. And no, I'm not sponsored, but if you're watching, I will gladly sponsor this product. But it is fantastic. It's a good entry level model. I think it cost me about $150. Maybe $200, but there are cheaper models available now that are actually probably a little bit better than what I have here. It's got a nice digital display so you can clearly see what temperature your water bath is going to be at, and you can set timers and have all sorts of control from it, but this is paramount. So you have the item that controls the temperature of the water. You need an item to hold the temperature controlled water. I have here a 12-quart Canberra restaurant style basin, and I use this for all of my sous vide cooking. If you don't have that item, that's totally fine. I think this was like $25 on Amazon, but you can just use a big pot or something that's gonna meet the minimum requirement water level for your immersion circulator, and also enough room for the food that you're gonna be cooking. All right, so we have the device that controls the water temperature. We have the basin that holds the temperature controlled water. Now we need a vacuum sealer. Now, this is not entirely necessary. There is a low-tech way to get the air out of a bag. I'm not going to be able to cover that on this episode, but I will make a point to cover it in a future episode. But for right now, I've got my Food Saver here, another brand that I'm not sponsored by, but if they wanted to throw some money my way, I will be a shill, because it works. It's great. It gets everything I need out of it. It's perfect. Now that we have the necessary equipment, we have to decide a necessary target. I just so happen to have a 2.5 pound ribeye steak roast thing that I got at the farmer's market today. This is the perfect candidate for a sous vide because it's an enormous piece of meat, right? And when you cook it on a stovetop, or if you try to grill it, or even if you try to roast it, what's gonna end up happening is at the top and the bottom, you're gonna have a gradient. Let's say you want this medium rare because that's gonna be the best temperature to cook this baby at, right? So right in the center, you're gonna have medium rare if you cook it right. But from the top, you're gonna have like well done, and then medium well, and then it's gonna kind of have a gradient from the top to the middle. We don't want that. Sous vide, you can get medium rare from top to bottom, and it's fantastic. You can kind of emulate these results from the oven, but it's not gonna be the same. Now, one of the problems that there is with sous vide is the outside's gonna look kind of gross because it's all gonna be cooked to the same temperature. You're not gonna have that nice browning at the end. So once the desired temperature has been reached, then we have to do an extra step and either saute the outside to get a nice golden brown crust, which is delicious, or grill it or do something else to get the outside done. We'll cover this towards the end. I'm gonna end up actually grilling my ribeye when it's done, but you could do like we did in the previous episode where I cooked a ribeye, where you have the steak in the pan and then basting herbs on it and stuff. That's totally an option. That's actually a really good option, but I'm gonna grill mine because how often do you have an enormous ribeye like that grilled up to perfection? But enough talk about science and perfect cooked steaks. Let's actually do the thing. All right, never mind the sounds going on in the background or my Food Saver up there in the background of the video here. But here's my beautiful display, but I can go ahead and set my temperature. Now I want this, 137 is probably about right. That's a good solid medium rare. So we're gonna do that because it's gonna need a lot of time on the grill in order to get the outside as charred as I want. So, and then I hit start. So this thing's gonna heat up. Obviously, if you have your own model, it's gonna do its own thing. It's gonna look a little bit different. But as you can see, my water is circulating. This is why it's called an immersion circulator. The machine is immersed in the water and it's circulating it. There are heating vessels inside the machine here, inside the chassis, if you will, and that's actually heating up the water. So I'm going to let this go and reach its desired temperature, and I'll meet you guys right back. Alright guys, my temperature is at 137. Got my water bubbling away. In goes my vacuum sealed steak. Very carefully, no splishy splashy since it's going to be a little hot. And now we wait. How long? Well, for a piece of meat this big, I'm probably going to come back in about 2 hours, but it could probably stay in there for at least 4 to 6 hours and be perfectly fine. See you then. Alright, my steak has been cooking for 2 hours and my kitchen smells not any different. That's kind of the beauty and the curse of cooking sous vide. It's been in here for 2 hours and there's none of that roasty aroma that would develop if you were to put this piece of meat in the oven or on the stove or anything like that. Doesn't mean it's not cooked though. I would say for a piece of meat like this, 2 hours is about right. It's going to ensure that the interior is cooked perfectly. And if I'm not ready for this, I can let this go for another 2 hours if I wanted to, but I'm getting kind of hungry and a little impatient. So I'm going to turn off my water bath because I don't need it going on anymore. I've got some tongs here. I'm going to get the steak out of the water, and I've got a little, ooh, that was loud. I've got a little rack here just to let the meat sit out. It's still in the bag and it's going to stay in there for just a few more minutes while it cools down so I can handle it. But after that, well, I'll just show you. So fresh out of the bag, the steak is gross. Look at it. It's like gray and it doesn't look very appetizing, but we know it's cooked because it's been in the hot water for like 2 hours. What is this? Well, that's why we have to grill it or saute it or broil it or something to get that nice, beautiful brown exterior that we associate with a perfectly done steak. The next step I have now is to pat dry the surface of the meat with some paper towels, and then I'm just going to hit it with some black pepper, some vegetable oil, and then I'm going to crank my grill up and hit it as hot as it can possibly go. Making sure the surface of the meat is dry is probably the second most important step in this entire process. You see, if the surface is wet, when you go to sear it, you're going to be spending a lot of heat energy evaporating the water or liquid or whatever that's on the surface. By patting it dry, you're eliminating that, and the heat is going to get right to work with browning the outside with that beautiful Maillard reaction that we all want so dearly. So I'm going to hit this with plenty of pepper on that side. Give it a flip. Don't you dare forget to season this cap. If you're making a ribeye like this, that is. Make sure all sides are seasoned. Very nice. I'm going to hit it with a little bit of oil on each side. With both sides of my steak liberally lubed, try saying that 3 times fast, I'm going to run outside real quick and get my grill going to the highest possible heat. The goal is to brown the exterior of the steak without overcooking anything on the inside of the steak. I'm not going to bring you along for this journey because, well, one, my grill is kind of dirty and I'm a little embarrassed of it, but also because this isn't a grilling episode, this is a sous vide episode. So if you did this procedure, if you got yourself an enormous, beautiful piece of ribeye and you wanted to cook it sous vide, you don't have to grill it. You can saute it, you can broil it, you can even blast it in a ridiculously hot oven if you so desire. Me, I'm going to stick to the grill. So I'm going to come right back. Well, for you, it'll only be a minute, but for me, it's going to be probably about 15 or 20 minutes while I get my grill going, and then I sear this guy up, and I'll show you the finished product. And with the magic of editing, I'm done. What was only a second for you was about 15 or 20 minutes for me, but that's okay. It was on the grill for an amount of time that someone might think, well, chef, why wouldn't you just cook it out on the grill to, from start to finish? And my answer for that would be, this is a very large piece of meat, and I could just put it in my water bath and walk away and then finish it up real quick. the amount of heat that I had going on the grill would have overcooked the meat. Like, it would be crazy. The inside would be way underdone. The outside would be basically burnt. It'd be crazy. This way, top to bottom on the inside is going to be perfectly done. There's going to be a little ring at the top and the bottom where I was grilling, and maybe on the outside where I stood it up. But for the most part, top to bottom, perfectly 137 degrees. It may have coasted up to about 138 or so, which for me is right about the sweet spot for a nice piece of beef such as this. But come a little closer and we'll give it a carve. So first thing, with my knife, I'm going to be very careful, of course, because, yeah, it's very hot. So let's take out the bone. A little ribeye trivia for you, if you didn't know. There's really two muscles here. There's this big circular eye. This is like the rib eye right here. But this outside portion, I think it's called the spinalis doris or something like that. Doralis, I'd have to look it up. But this right here, this little band, is the most beautiful and amazing part of the cow. It is the most tender. It's got the most marbling. It's the best part of a ribeye by far. But I'm just gonna kind of commit a travesty here and cut right down the middle so I can show you guys what we're talking about here. Oh my God. This is ridiculous. It gets me every time. Forget the fact that each side is slightly tapered, it hits the heat differently, it doesn't matter. Look at this. I've got a little bit of gray here where I seared it on both top and bottom, but goodness, from top to here, it is the exact same color from left to right and up to down. Even the little spinalis delicious chef treat over here is the same. Everything's exactly the same. This is why you sous vide. You will never mess up a steak. You will never mess up chicken. And it's foolproof. Look at this. The results literally speak for themselves. I'm speechless right now. Jealous yet? Okay, but seriously, I hope this episode has whetted your appetite, so to speak, for sous vide cooking. If you've never heard of it before, look it up. Otherwise, I'll be posting a lot more on this as opportunities arise. Like I said, it's a little bit more work, but I think you can tell from the images alone that it is definitely worth it. And Innova, if you're watching me, shameless attempts at sponsorships aside, I want to thank you for watching this episode of Tasty Techniques. If you like what you see, leave a like on the video. If you have any questions regarding sous vide cooking or ideas or websites that you can get the equipment from, leave me a comment. If you have any sort of concerns or anything like that, I read all my comments, I respond when necessary, and I love talking to you guys. Thanks again for watching. I'm Chef Lethal, and I'll see you next time. Aha!